Annie Besant, 1847 to 1933, political reformer, women's rights activist, theosophist and Indian nationalist. An imperious necessity forces me to communicate the truth, as I see it, whether or not the speech please or displease, whether or not it carry reward or blame. That one loyalty to truth I ought to preserve stainless, something friendships fail me or human ties be broken. Annie Besant, An Autobiography Chapter 14. Annie Besant used to be born the 1st of October, 1847 in Clapham, London to mother and father of Irish roots. After the early dying of her father in 1852, the household had been delivered up in relative poverty and Annie was once regarded after by means of a buddy of the household, Ellen Marryat. This enabled Annie to obtain an accurate training and tour around Europe. In 1867, aged solely 19, she married a clergyman, Frank Besant, 7 years her senior. They went to stay in Sipsey, Lincolnshire, the place Frank was once a vicar. However, the marriage quickly skilled difficulties. Annie grew to be more and more radicalized in her political views, whereas Frank was once commonly conservative. Annie instinctively supported the rights of employees and negative farmers. Annie additionally started out writing, however her husband didn't permit her to maintain her earnings. More severely, Annie started questioning the faith of her delivery and, in 1873, she stopped receiving communion due to the fact she no longer felt she should name herself a Christian. But I ought to no longer attend the Holy Communion, for in that service, full of cognizance of Jesus as deity and of his atoning sacrifice, I may want to no longer take section except hypocrisy. Annie Besant, An Autobiography Chapter. IV. This used to be the remaining straw for the marriage and Annie left her husband, taking her daughter to London. Looking lower back on her marriage, she displays a temperament no longer perfect to the Victorian expectations of a passive wife. For underneath the soft, loving, pliable lady there lay hidden, as a good deal unknown to herself as to her surroundings, a lady of robust dominant will, power that panted for expression and rebelled towards restraint, fiery and passionate feelings that had been seething below compression, a most undesirable accomplice to sit down in the lady's armchair on the home rug earlier than the fire. Annie Besant, An Autobiography Chapter 4. In London, she grew to become stated for her radical political views. She espoused freedom of thought, women's rights, secularism, start manage and the rights of the working class. She used to be additionally incredibly necessary of the affect and teachings of Christianity, against the teachings of everlasting torture, of the vicarious atonement, of the infallibility of the Bible. I leveled all the power of my intelligence and tongue, and I uncovered the records of the Christian Church with unsparing hand, its persecutions, its spiritual wars, its cruelties, its oppressions. Annie Besant, An Autobiography Chapter 7. She grew to be a famous public speaker, giving lectures throughout the country. In London, she grew to be acquainted with Charles Bradlaugh. For a time, they grew to become very shut on a private level, sharing comparable political and non-secular views. In 1877, they posted a controversial e-book on start control. The e-book argued the working category ought to in no way be joyful till they may want a restriction their variety of children. This brought about an actual scandal, especially amongst the non-secular establishment. They have been arrested and put on trial. The trial generated great media coverage, polarizing opinions. They won guide from liberal politicians. They should effortlessly have been convicted. However, eventually, the case was once thrown out on a technicality. Despite the controversy, Charles Bradlaugh used to be in a position to grow to be an MP. His election brought about a stir due to the fact as an atheist, he refused to swear the oath of allegiance. It took 6 years for it to be resolved in his favor. Despite a shut friendship, Annie commenced drifting away from the political views of Bradlaugh. She grew to be extra influenced through the New Socialist establishments such as the Fabian Society. In particular, Annie Besant was once impressed via the views and persona of George Bernard Shaw, who used to be then a struggling Irish author dwelling in London. They shared many herbal sympathies such as Irish domestic rule, and a problem for social justice. Besant, the late 19th century, was once a duration of developing working type agitation, accelerated with the aid of bad working stipulations and excessive unemployment. In 1887, a mass rally in opposition to unemployment was once held in Trafalgar Square, at which Annie Besant was once a key speaker at the event. The rally was once disrupted through the police main to one dying and many injuries. It was once a key second in the improvement of higher political attention of the working class, and was once given the time period, Bloody Sunday. In 1888, London match girls at the Bryant and Mays manufacturing unit went on strike in protest at the lousy working conditions. The female labored lengthy hours for low pay and had been in charge to go through from industrial ailments such as phossy jaw. The strikers requested Annie Besant to assist them organize and articulate their views. Using her competencies and contacts in the socialist movement, she was once in a position to obtain a lot public sympathy for the pudding workers. After a week of demonstrations, strikes, and Maine 50 women to Parliament, the enterprise gave in to the needs of the workers. This led to enhancements in pay and conditions. The public sympathy and success of the strike used to be a necessary improvement in the unskilled trades union movement. During this time, Annie Besant grew to become attracted to the philosophy of Marxism. In addition to being a member of the Fabian Society, she additionally used to be a member of the SDF and later Socialist League. In 1885, Annie Besant stood for election to the London School Board. Campaigning on a coverage of "No Greater Hungry Children," she got here pinnacle in a ballot in Tower Hamlets with over 15,000 votes. In this sense, she was once an early function mannequin for ladies politicians. Though girls didn't have the vote for well-known elections, she sought to extend women's participation in neighborhood government. During her length on the Board of Education, she performed in vital position in supporting the London dockers shape a union and acquire higher wages in an enterprise which had been dominated by way of one-day employment contracts. As properly as politics, Annie additionally grew to become involved in religious philosophy. In 1902, she grew to be a Freemason, becoming a member of the Co-Freemasonry movement. She was once attracted by way of their trust that guys and girls have to be a part of collectively to work for a higher world. The International Order of Co-Freemasonry Le Droit Humain is no longer dogmatic. It works truly looking out for the truth. In lodges, discussions regarding social and non-secular questions can't in any case supply extra than explanations to participants and allow them to do their responsibilities as Freemasons with a higher understanding. Source: Internet link. With her tireless strength and enthusiasm, she helped observed new orders in Britain and different components of the world. Her electricity performed a key position in the global increase of the order. In 1889, Annie Besant studied and reviewed the Secret Doctrine by means of H.P. Blavatsky, a Maine theosophist. After Assembly Blavatsky, she grew to become actively worried in the theosophist movement. The swap from an lively member of secularist society to being an outstanding member of a non-secular company greatly surprised many of her historical friends. But to Besant, it was once phase of her life's quest for fact in some things structure she discovered it. Besant writes about her views and influence of H.P. Blavatsky, whom she regarded up to nearly as a guru, and we, who lived round her, on HPB, who in closest intimacy watched her day after day, we undergo witness to the unselfish splendor of her life, the aristocracy of her character, and we lay at her FTR most reverent gratitude for information gained, lives purified, electricity developed. Annie Besant, an autobiography. Chapter 14. As her activity in theosophy grew, her dedication to left-wing politics declined and her membership of socialist societies lapsed. Annie Besant later moved to India, the place she was once energetic in the theosophy motion, and centered a faculty for boys in Varanasi, the central Hindu college. By 1909, Besant had turned out to be president of the Theosophical Society. A key educating of the Theosophical Society was once that they would seem to be after and put together a world trainer for his essential mission. This instructor used to be determined in 1909 as the 14-year-old Jiddu Krishnamurti. Besant was once made his guardian, and the two developed a shut relationship, and he regarded Besant his surrogate mother. Later Krishnamurti would surrender his position as a world trainer and spoil with the theosophist movement, however he remained shut to Besant, whom he held in excessive regard. Annie Besant grew to become an early member of the Indian National Congress. In 1916, she launched the Indian Home Rule League, which agitated for Indian independence. India needs home rule for two reasons: one vital and vital, the different much less necessary, however necessary. Firstly, due to the fact freedom is the birthright of each and every nation. Secondly, due to the fact her most vital pursuits are now made subservient to the pastimes of the British Empire barring her consent, and her assets are now not utilized for her biggest needs. Annie Besant, The Case for India, 1917, Chapter 3. In 1917, she was once arrested for protesting towards British rule. This led to a wave of protests from distinct Indian groups to extraordinary countrywide acclaim. She was once launched securing verbal guarantees from the British. It helped make stronger the Indian faith that self-rule was once a possibility. For a year she used to be made the president of the Indian Congress for a year. Previous leaders such as Gandhi and later Nehru